What's going on, English 218? I hope this finds you well. The weather's getting colder outside, the semester's drawing on, my hair's getting longer, things are getting pretty real. So I just wanted to make a quick video, and when I say quick this time I actually mean it, to talk to you about what we're doing, where we're heading, and some of the things I'm observing. So, as you know, right now we're in the midst of our writing for the public unit, and the heart and soul of this comes back to something that's really important to me, and it's this. When we work in a knowledge economy, when we work and become experts in something, it's really important for us to be able to mobilize that knowledge in some meaningful way to the public. And it's not good enough for us to just be skilled at communicating to other experts. If we want the information that we hold and that we know and that we believe is important, if we want to get that out there, we need to develop a certain set of skills. And so that's really what these two assignments, the blog and the fact sheet, are really about. It's about taking information that's pretty complex, that's emerging, and being able to share it in meaningful, ethical, honest ways with our readers so that they can make impactful decisions about their lives. And so, as you probably know or will come to know soon, your next assignment is the fact sheet assignment. And what this essentially is it's going to be a handout version, a very quick and easy to read version of your blog assignment. And so what you're going to have to think about is how can I take my blog and reduce it to a document that's easy and rapid to read and that fits on one side of a standard sheet of paper. And this is really important because oftentimes as professionals you'll be asked to give public presentations, to give presentations to coworkers, etc. And it's a really nice thing to be able to give them something to take away. It's something that they can carry with them, that they can use as reference, that they can potentially share with others. But the key is that it has to be quick and easy to read. And so going into next week, I'm going to teach you some very valuable skills about how to do that. But in the meantime, I just want you to begin thinking about what that sheet might look like for you. And I think you can imagine, and many of you have imagined, what this means for your career and how this ability to share information with the public can be a really critical skill for you professionally. So, as I'm looking at your blogs, I'm continuously thinking some of the same things, and it really comes back to two key points. Well, three, I guess. One, and I commented on this quite a bit when I was looking at your story leads in your opening paragraphs, and that is engagement. And I can't stress enough how important engagement is. When you're dealing with the public, one of the first things you have to do is capture their attention. You have to make it very clear that this information, which maybe at first blush can seem esoteric or can seem academic in nature, is meaningful to their life. So you have to find some way to intersect this information with their life. And you need to do that in a compelling and convincing way because you only have a few sentences to hook them in. And if you lose them, then whatever comes next is pretty much irrelevant. And so you have to find some way to take this information and make it such that, and frame it in such a way that the reader genuinely wants to read and learn from it. And there's any number of ways to do that, which you've heard a number of times, but I just want you to remember how critically important that is, that your first interactions, your first touch with the reader is really critical. If they're not compelled to read, then truly whatever the rest of the document says is virtually irrelevant. And so whether that means you're going to share a startling statistic, you're going to flip a long-held belief on its head, whether you're going to tell them a story, paint them a picture, it's really important that you do that and that you take something that may seem impersonal and make it personal. And that leads me to my second point, and that is you need to find a way to make this information intersect with the reader's life. You need to make sure that you share the significance, the on-the-ground practical significance of this information with your reader. Too often when we talk about things, we leave them in sort of abstract terms, and it's important for us to ground this in concrete examples and to really frame it in a way where the reader fully understands the significance of this information. I apologize, I keep looking out the window because my wife's about to get home anytime, and these are really hard to get in one take, and I'm hoping that I can get this in one take. So anyway, that's what I'm looking at. And so it's really important to share the significance of this information. And then sort of a very related topic or very related takeaway or thing that I'm seeing is that you have to make sure that you explain to the reader what they should do with this information. Okay, great. you've taught me this at sort of an academic level. Now what do I do with it? How does this change my life? What should I do with this information? What change should I do? What behavior should I change? And I think that's really important because often when we're writing to the public, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give them information that makes their life better, that helps them make better decisions, that persuades them to take up some cause or whatever that is. And I just want you to think about that really needs to be there. And of course, that's related to the idea of significance. For the most part, at the sentence level, everybody's writing is really strong. I find that you're using very good quality source information, which is really, really important to me. Your ability to summarize and paraphrase it's exceptional. I do think it's important, a little writing tip. You should only quote when you absolutely need to. So when something is quoted, it's a really important rhetorical move in a piece of writing. You're signaling to the reader when you put something in quotes that it's very important. And my rule is that I only quote something when I can't say it better myself, or that it's critical to preserve the specific language that that the writer used. So keep that in mind, that you have options. You can summarize, which is taking something really big and making it really small. To paraphrase really means to take a particular passage, particular sentence, particular takeaway and put it in your own words. And then certainly you can quote, and I'm not saying don't ever quote, but just recognize the rhetorical significance when you quote something. It's really setting it apart from the rest of the text by setting it off with quotation marks. And oftentimes, as writers, we quote unnecessarily. We're quoting stuff that, frankly, we could write in more clear, plain language. And so I think it's really important for you to keep that in mind. Speaking of clear, plain language, I think everybody's doing a pretty good job of framing their blogs in ways that are fairly conversational, fairly accessible to the reader. Keep in mind, too, that one of the things that we want to think about, and one of the decisions that we get to make as writers, is about paragraph length. And when we're writing to a public audience or a reluctant readership, a group that we're trying to compel to pay attention, we might want to make our paragraphs a little bit shorter than we otherwise might. I know that takes some unlearning or some rethinking, because in many writing classes you're trained that a paragraph has certain components or should be a certain length, and that's somewhat helpful just as a heuristic or as a frame, but I would caution you or encourage you to think about paragraphs as being a really rhetorical decision, something that you can do. I think short paragraphs are like a gift to a reader. They make the whatever the content is look more accessible, and this is just me personally, and you can think of your own way to frame this. Anytime I feel like I'm shifting gears, switching focus, switching topics, switching perspectives, anytime I'm switching, I'm generally going to break into a new paragraph. I think that it signals to the reader that switch or that frame change, and I think that it's something that it's one of the decisions we can make as a writer to make our reading more accessible. So try to keep that in mind also, and I think that will help you. Also, don't be afraid to take some liberties when you're formatting your blogs. If it makes sense to break it up into subheadings or sections denoted by subheadings, you can certainly do that. And I think that's an important lesson that we can think about, is that, and it's not something we're asked or encouraged to do very often in academic writing, but it's something that we can certainly do in our own writing, that if we're addressing different aspects of the topic, or it just makes sense to create a framework divided by headings, we should certainly think about that, because that allows the reader to make reference to certain points within the text if they leave the text. It kind of signals at a 50,000-foot view how the text is organized, and so I think that's really, really important. So those are just some things to think about. Again, after this unit, just to zoom back out, after this unit we're going to get back into this sort of heavy-duty academic writing, and you're going to complete an annotated bibliography and a literature review. But I think that a course like this has to include a unit about writing to the public. One, because of the population that this course serves. I hope, and I'm sure that some of you will go on to earn high levels of education, masters and PhDs and things like that, and probably will publish in academic journals and in those types of places, and I think that's great. But I also recognize that many of you are going to be practitioners, and that the ability to create a clear handout or a clear discharge paperwork or a clear summary of a talk that you've given is also really important. And so that's why I think it's important for us to do the fact sheet assignment. And likewise, I think it's going to be fairly common for you to have to communicate ideas to a public audience in sort of a longer format. And so that's where the blog comes from. So even though this is an advanced academic writing class, I think we're limiting ourselves if we only think about academic genres, that it's really important for us to be able to share information to the public. So there you are, under 10 minutes. I want to reinforce that if anybody needs any help with anything, just call, text, or email, and I'll meet you anytime, anywhere, to help you in any way that I can. And that's a promise to you, and I'm excited to work with you over the rest of the semester.